This video is about how to organize your company when you're undertaking a pricing project. The success of a pricing project is actually your alignment inside a company over where the company is, where it is going, the markets that it's addressing, and what changes in pricing are going to help move the company to the next level. However, once you are given charge of a pricing project, at that point, you may not know the key biases of different team members inside your company. This video aims to illustrate the type of biases people carry. So sellers are going to always have a very recency bias about pricing. They're going to always give you the feedback about what happened last quarter. They're only going to remember the deals that were closed that were the most impactful deals in their patch. They may not remember what happened in the last 6 months or the last year. So seller feedback is always to be taken with a grain of salt. At the same time, they're actually the closest to the ground truth. If something hasn't been working for a long time, they will be able to tell you that as well. But you really have to do a lot of seller interviews and ask your most experienced sellers for their input. If you don't do that and you just about ask any seller who is not very experienced at your company, this is where the common refrain of our price points are too high comes in, because it's inherently tied to them being able to move an opportunity forward. And they may be getting objections of pricing, which are not even true objections of pricing. There will be objections of being able to differentiate. But your CEO is also going to be biased about pricing to their own detriment. If the CEO is talking to growth investors, venture capital is going to push your company to scale very fast, right? And as a result, the pricing that they are going to advocate for is pricing that is very simple, but that may not be the pricing that has actually been working at your company. And if your company is actually in the enterprise side, this may be completely opposed to what you actually need in terms of pricing. If you simplify it too much, you may start to see a decline in revenue. You may start to see your customers churning much more. So be careful, because the impression in VC's minds about how fast you need to grow and what you need as a result is a very high level impression, and it has to be merged and married with how your company runs. All right. The third team that is going to have a bias around pricing is the finance team. This is going to be a lot around margin, right? Finance really cares about margin, especially in today's high interest rate environment. They care about margin, but they may care about so much about margin that they may not even improve how margin is computed. How much your cost of goods sold was last year is going to be different as you're scaling, right? Like you on a per customer basis, you have actually more and more margin if your infrastructure costs and your investments have not increased. If finance does not update their margin calculation, they may be saying, hey, we think we have a 90% margin and therefore we should not discount more than a certain amount. I have personally had my finance team revise these calculations to find out the actual margin was around 97%, to everybody's happy surprise, right? So they're going to have a more of a cash and margin bias, which is okay. And that bias is fair, but it needs to be tempered with growth expectations, revenue expectations, and so on. At the same time, if you have a customer success department, a professional services team, they're going to have a very, I did so much work, hence this should be more expensive bias. And this is actually similar to sometimes what product teams also have this bias, or engineering teams. This took me so much effort to build, or I had to deliver so much service to these customers, and hence we should price higher, which inherently is the bias on costs. Like I will price based on cost rather than the value delivered. Something may have taken a lot of time to deliver for the customers and yet be perceived by customers as table stakes. Therefore, what input you are putting in to create something, either from a product standpoint or from a service standpoint, has only some relation to the end value perceived by the customers. And there are often services and product features that you can build that are going to have a very high value perception by the customers, of which it took you very little effort to build. So these are some common biases across the product and customer success teams, across the sales teams, the CEO, across finance. And as the leader of this pricing project, you have to merge together all of these perspectives and align them across a agreed context for the company, and make sure everybody buys into this before you actually create different strategies or you provide options on the table. The more time spent in alignment is going to ensure that you are able to succeed in a project, because I will say that 8 out of 10 times, the reason pricing projects fail is everybody has a different understanding of the goal in their mind. And a project may be 6 months down the road and you may not have made any progress because there hasn't been alignment.